He wasn't looking for trouble, just a little company. Some men don't fall from bullets. They fade from silence, from the words they swallowed when they should have shouted, from the chances they walked past and never faced. Have you ever sat alone at night, wondering if you let your one shot at doing right slip away? Well, Morgan had. Years had passed since anyone spoke his name like it mattered. The world didn't pause to see if he was alive, it just moved on. One day he had a wife. The next, only a bare patch of earth behind the barn. That morning, Will wasn't looking for anything in particular, just another broken fence to repair, when he noticed the sack. Hung crooked beneath a low-hanging cottonwood, it swayed lazily in the wind. The kind of sight a wise man might ignore. Trouble doesn't always give a warning growl before it strikes. But something about this seemed off, too still, too silent. He rode closer, eyes shadowed under the brim of his hat. The sack wasn't tightly tied, more like thrown over a branch and snagged halfway. The burlap was torn and sun-bleached, and dark stains marked the bottom. Then he heard it, a sound you never forget, not a scream, not a cry, just a faint, fragile breath. Will dismounted slowly, careful. The sack shifted. Inside was a young woman, maybe 25. Her dress was tattered, her skin dry and blistered, her lips cracked and bloodied. One wrist was still bound with rusted wire. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She only whispered, as if she'd already given up. Just kill me fast. Will froze. Then he knelt and pulled back the thin blanket covering her. What he saw twisted his stomach, not because it was new, but because someone had intended for her disappearance to be permanent. They hadn't left her to die, they left her to vanish. The ranch wasn't much, a dusty porch, 2 creaky chairs nobody used, and a roof that groaned louder than a hungover man every time the wind blew. But for her, it became the safest place she had known in years. Will didn't ask her name. He didn't question what had happened or why she was left like that. He asked nothing, and perhaps that's why she stayed. She didn't sleep in the bed. She curled up on the floor beside the stove, wary of the mattress, flinching at the kettle's hiss, watching the door as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. Most days she said nothing, drinking what Will poured into her tin cup and nibbling the bread as though it might be poisoned. But she remained, and that alone counted. Will wasn't much of a talker either. He went about his routines, fixing fences, feeding the livestock, bringing meals without a word. And perhaps that was their language. Quiet, steady, a rhythm neither had used in years. A week passed. One morning, while chopping wood, she stepped outside, hair tied back with a strip of cloth, shoulders stiff yet straight. She said nothing, merely observed him swing the axe, then picked up a log herself. They worked side by side in silence, 2 people who had run out of words long before meeting. That night, she whispered a single line, "You didn't touch me?" Will looked at her, silent. She nodded once, a gesture carrying more weight than words. For the first time, she finished her meal, every last bite, and even gave a faint, real smile. If it ended there, one might think this was a story of healing, of second chances, but healing isn't simple, not when the past comes riding back. The quiet never lasts. It began with hoof prints, deep and fresh, pressed into the dirt near the southern fence. Will spotted them early, just as the sun split the horizon. They weren't his, they weren't from town. He said nothing, checked his rifle, and rode the boundary twice that day. That night, she sat closer to the fire, restless. Something felt wrong. Then she showed him a mark burned into her wrist, a sloppy tattoo, 3 letters, JKS. Will had seen it before on a drunken Bisbee years ago, bragging about sins no man should boast of. Back then, he looked away, hoping to avoid someone else's mess. Now, that mark on her skin made it his problem too. The next morning, Will rode to Tombstone, not to talk, but to listen. 3 girls had vanished in the past 4 months, 2 from Texas Dollies, one from Santa Fe, all under 25. Gone, silent. No action taken. The sheriff claimed no witnesses, no evidence, no reason to stir panic. Will nodded, thanked him, and left, but something inside him had shifted. This time, it wasn't just about justice. It was about her. That night, under the flicker of an oil lamp, she sat opposite him, eyes troubled. "They're coming for me," she said, voice barely a whisper. "I know," he replied, reaching for his rifle. He could see the fear etched on her face, the way she bit her lip, trying to hold it together. It mirrored the turmoil in his own chest. There was a part of him that wanted to shield her, to bury the past and build a future where such shadows didn't exist. But life rarely offered such neat choices. He had saved her once, but now he was going to protect her. Will didn't charge in like a storybook hero. He moved quietly through dry creek beds and narrow canyons known only to locals and coyotes. By sundown, he found the camp, a crooked shack with smoke rising from its chimney, laughter inside rough, grating voices. He tied his horse, crept up the back trail, waited for the third clink of a bottle. Then he struck. The first man leapt up too fast. Will's rifle butt struck squarely. The second reached for his belt. Will fired a warning shot, shattering the lantern and filling the room with sparks and smoke. The third dropped his knife midair. No one spoke. Will grabbed the girl huddled in the corner, wrapped her in his coat, and left them with one clear message: "She's not yours." She never was. Touch another girl, you won't get a second warning. He brought her to Tombstone. The sheriff wanted to argue, but the sight of the broken blade and her bloodied dress ended it. This time the law did its job. Back home, she waited by the gate. She didn't cry, didn't question. She merely looked at him as if realizing maybe not all men were cruel. And Will, for the first time in years, didn't feel hollow. He had stood for something. Justice isn't always simple, but when it arrives, it leaves its mark. Days softened. She tended the garden, brushed the horses, even hummed while sweeping the porch. Will noticed but said nothing. Some things are lost if spoken too soon. He continued his routines, but now a second cup sat on the table, a pair of boots by the door that weren't his. She slept in a room across the hall. That was enough. Nights were sometimes shared under the stars, no words, only presence, the kind louder than conversation. One evening, she asked, "Why did you come back for me?" He thought, then said simply, "Because someone had to." That was all she needed to know. Life doesn't always give what's deserved, but sometimes it gives someone who sees our worth, and that can change everything. Will never demanded she stay. She never promised. Yet each morning she opened the door, each night returned home. Love didn't blaze, it rained quietly. Like old wood soaked in forgiveness, like new beginnings. Sometimes all it takes is one person who offers shelter when we've forgotten we deserve it.